Hi, in today's episode, we have TB Dinesh, a scientist who gave up his career in life in the USA to return to his hometown in Karnataka. Yes, he left it all to come here. He was nostalgic about the mountain he used to sit on as a young boy to watch the sunset and the sunrise. He yearned to return to the path where goats trudge sheepishly at their own pace, munching on leaves and the grass that grows around this sleepy town called Tumkur. Here he started Iruve, a brand that specializes in products made from the grass that grows abundantly here. This is the bulrush, locally called Jondu, in Canada. He has started a crafter space where he has empowered the locals to create craft work and products with the grass of Tumkur. Iruve has several active projects which include the crafter space, a natural farming initiative, a natural building project, a hacker space, and a community radio station. Welcome to the show, Dinesh, and tell me the start of your journey, your influence, your childhood, and the inspiration that gets you going forever.
Thank you, Mohu.
You got that right.
Yeah, it's not as dreamy as you put it, but things have happened over time. I like the way you put it, though. I wish it was like that. What happened about 20 years ago when I came back was with typically like back from the Silicon Valley, California, with our own ideas. And being a computer scientist, our ideas were all about generative programming and how to make this simple for common people, including people like you and I. And when we moved here, we realized everything was off. Like to get like simple software engineering talent was not at all what we expected. It was so hard. Two, then I met a lot of people. One triggering point was a catalyst point was a conference called Development by Design. It had like 5 different sessions. Even today, all the other session people are my life-changing influencers. One was about non-text.
How old were you when you left everything and you came here?
I was 40. Now you know how old I am. So it started in 38. We initiated something in Bangalore and then realized when people ask, where are you? Am I here or there? And this was very confusing. So it started like having some hold when I started saying, no, I'm here in Bangalore. So, and then slowly moved back.
So did you do a back and forth for a while?
For a while, yeah.
Yeah,
For
and how
about
long
2
was the
years.
back and forth?
For about 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
And what did you go through when you did this whole back and forth? Were you unsure about the new journey that you were embarking on, or you were very sure right from the beginning?
No, I mean, I was confused about the lack of talent in India. Then I realized it was more of a rush towards going to large multi-international industries, corporations, and people wanting to go out of country. It was that kind of a movement. So, and as we spent more time in what we want to do here, when I met more people who are working on the ground, it was a point of no return. More I spent time with, let's say, somebody working on women's issues. I can remember her name, Jacinta. And she had spent 25 years on working on, like when she started when she was 25 or 20 or something. And that itself I couldn't believe, right? I was here 40, right, trying to completely unaware of so many things that people are going through. That's when we started this NGO called Janastu, because I felt like people are doing okay. Until then, we felt like we are doing something. And then when I met all these people, it felt like people are doing okay. Actually, we have nothing to do than to see what they want and maybe cater to that. She's been working in a small area, and the more time she spent, more things open up. Like if you're working for women, like who takes care of the children, then you start a small school for the children. What we realized was 25 years later, she's probably not worked with more than 200 women and not more than like 2 square kilometers area. That's the kind of input and effort that's been put into on the ground.
My goodness.
And these people are the most fascinating. So the more we work, the more we discovered like, okay, there is another person working on the role of text, how the text is destroyed, like what is happening. And then there is another person working on the pastoralists, like nomadic pastoralism to crafts and so many issues. Like these are all our heroes, right?
Absolutely, they are heroes.
Yeah. So that is what happened. And then we started looking at like what it means to provide IT support to these people.
But they have to be literate for them to understand the IT support and the solutions that you're giving them, or somebody's taking care of that for them.
It took us a long time, but what all we did was when they heard about IT support, like, oh, can you set up a B2B for us? Like, what do you want to do? You tell us. Like, maybe an email is enough. You don't need a B2B because somebody is talking about a B2B. So we had to kind of deconstruct the IT world for them for most part, come down and make it simple and make it comfortable for them. It's not
So, how
only
did you do that? What are the things that you incorporated to make it simple? As you said, the IT world, I still find it extremely difficult
yeah
because it's so dynamic. And,
Yeah, exactly. Things are moving so fast, but at the same time, we have come from a world where we have seen it all, right?
Yes.
So then it was about sitting down and talking to them and explaining, what each component means, what it takes to maintain. For example, a lot of these NGOs and people who are working on the ground, like they get a lot of volunteers. They'll build some stuff and they're all very happy. But they also have to move on. 3 months later, they're somewhere else. And the whole system has become dysfunctional because there is some issue in the software or something, and nobody can help. Once you do a software and leave, a chief here cannot jump in and say, let me fix it. It's whole new, you know, way of discovering how it was developed and all that. So this is the process. And then we set up this nonprofit called Janastu.
What did Janastu do?
Yeah, Janastu means, like, as I said, people are okay, we have nothing to do. Jana Astu, right? So, but what we...
So break the word Jana Astu for us, for the listeners.
Yeah. So what we ended up doing was to think about this whole, what's going on, come up with fixing this immediate problem issue that I mentioned, which is there might be great people volunteering, developing software, but they have to leave. So one of the main things what we did was we would do open source. So it amortizes costs. Like if Mohua has asked me to develop something, it's available for Asif, except for the little differences he wants to bring about.
You made it more democratic.
Yeah. But most often because of the IT costs, it's so huge compared to even today, right? IT person might get 5 lakhs per month, and somebody working, digging the ground will get like not even 200 rupees per month. Okay, at most 500 rupees per day, I mean. So this is the difference, right? And the IT person would feel like they're working really hard-earned money, hard-earned money.
Yes,
right?
they always
the other,
say that.
the other people will feel like, so there's no way of bringing these worlds together unless we bring whole community of people to support this system. And that's why the open source is so beautiful, right? So if I have developed something for you, Asif can take it up and fix it for his need. Right? It's all incremental thing as long as he puts it back in the open. But the most beautiful thing is it's also an open education, open box education, right? You won't learn something by using, let's say, closed box Microsoft Word unless your neighbor can fix something with it. Like even if it's localization, right? If you want a Kannada localized word thing, it has to have enough users, and then they have to approve, and then they have to hire people to localize it. And so as simple as something that localizing means doing it in your own language.
Yes.
And as simple as localizing can be, and if it's done by 3 volunteers, it'll be done in a few days. But if it's done through a large corporation like Microsoft, it might take like a decision making, like their business value determination and all that. It might take like 5 years, 10 years. So who's suffering in all this? The people who have to now use only English. That brings us back to the literacy part, right? So the various ways to look at literacy and how IT go together. In this current phase where the internet is so new, web is only 30 years old, right? And we feel like we grew up with it, it's always been there and all that.
Yes, we're all so used to it.
Yeah, so used to it. And everybody is using it. And what are they doing? Forwarding messages on WhatsApp. And until this WhatsApp did this new policy, a lot of the people I know didn't even know that internet was not just WhatsApp and Facebook. Now there's like Signal and Telegram and all that, right? And browsers. And so most people don't browse. Because what do they get when they browse? You need to know how to put the keywords. And then all your results are text. What do you do with it? So all they can do is manage something like a WhatsApp or a chat group where you see something as pictures and forward it to friends,
But it has revolutionized communication and the content space in a big way. You know, it's no
Absolutely.
longer really just at the level of somebody who owns a very large corporation and they can only create content.
Yeah.
Today, you have content creators from all over. The only sad part is this, that it's not yet become vernacular in a country as diverse as ours.
Mm.
You know, and that's something that I pray for, that it should happen in the entire, I think, landscape of technology, and access to technology would change. You know, for people if they have vernacular
Yeah.
ability to do create content. Yes.
Yeah. One is corporate control of content
Yes.
creation. Number two is mostly state. In India, it's been like countries like India, it's been like mostly state control. State is very afraid of any kind of agitation or infringement from across the border. And like if you look at like community radio,
Yes.
so hard to get a community radio until lately. And what is the reason? Because somebody from across the border might broadcast something, brainwash people in the Indian side of the border. So it could be various reasons like this.
But the community radio that we were talking about in Tukur has a radius of it's it's not a very
No,
long
yeah,
distance.
that's a different thing. Yeah. Community radio in a general sense is where you apply for a frequency, like FM, you broadcast. Okay. So they give this only to universities where they have full control, and they make sure that nobody makes news. News.
So it's controlled information.
Yeah. News can be only given by the state. So if you have a community radio in a university, they can make university content, but they are allowed to rebroadcast news. So this is the world we grow up in, right? And suddenly now look at what WhatsApp does as a group communication. I mean, you can share content, you can create content, you can redistribute content, and anybody, if you look at it as a community radio at work, right? You can say something and they can all listen to it. You can all be participants. It's not like three people in a radio station who would determine what is the outflow of the content, right? So it's a true community radio. So this is what like it flipped. And if you look at the mind space in which people grew, was completely what is information? Information was always authoritative and therefore trustable. This is the mind space that we grew up.
Yes, absolutely.
And now you get a lot of information, but our mind space is still like if I see something, it's trustable, right? So this is a new phase that we have to reconfigure ourselves, rebalance what news means, what information means. So the flip side is like what you said, we can make content, we can distribute to who we want. Now it's this what I call as the belligerent phase of information management, right? It's like teenage phase, or maybe I should even say like a what's that word, toddler something.
Toddler space.
No, they basically a toddler is a tantrum. You know,
Tantrum
like
throwing.
yeah, like yeah, they're always.
Why do
showing,
you say that it's belligerent?
Yeah, because you want this world to be the beautiful, nicely curated information, trustable information, fact checked stuff, right? But right now, it's just people having, exploring the possibilities and the good part and the bad part, and seeing like, okay, let me just generate junk and see what happens. Right? There's a lot of reason. I mean, number one is what I talked about, I think, where they have the capacity to create content and distribute, unlike ever before. I mean, what's of interest here is there's something much, much deeper going on in terms of human evolution. It's the first time that an oral history can be maintained or created by the community about themselves. Until now, you might have like a lot of heritage. You might say, oh, yeah, heritage places, our heritage. It has all been quote unquote digital till now because the digits, the fingers have been used, right? Whether it's an inscription, whether it's a temple, it's a sculpture, you know, anything that you look at as a heritage has been digital heritage. Until now, because of digital technology, we are going into a space where actually our oral heritage can be captured. Okay. And this has been an ongoing need for a democratic management of knowledge, democratization of knowledge. The first thing that happened was like, how do you, if you think of the problem, like you say something, now I'm saying this whole recording, right? If that is to be done without the recorder, and then you need to share it with a whole group of people in time and space. It has to be shared also in Bengal, in US, in something else, and in time, which is like next generation and the generation after. What would you do? Do you know what we have done?
Tell us.
It's all over. We create something called Brahmins.
Brahmins. We talk about the caste system here.
No, no, not yet. We enslave a group of people as knowledge holders. All they have to do is repeat this. There are schools in which they practice how to precisely regurgitate, repeat, learn, and repeat. So you can go like 5 generations later, they will be precisely repeating this recording. And then it will spread sideways. Complete enslavement. Right? And then you need to incentivize them. So the whole system has to support them because they can't, if this is
You're
their job.
questioning the very foundation of religion here because
I'm not questioning, I'm recreating the need for what knowledge is and how knowledge is need to be propagated and what are the systems that you need, right? Of course, I mean, there is this large belief that this is a well-formed, well-intended knowledge. So that needs to be good for all. Therefore, it needs to be communicated. I'm not questioning all that. I'm just recreating how such a system would evolve and for what reason. And all I'm saying is if you just want this recording to go spread in time and space, you need this whole schools where they come from birth, train themselves to precisely propagate it. Okay, that's the beginning of the knowledge holders. Right? So I mean Brahmin is a euphemism in a sort. But now we have created this need and we are all in cohorts. We means like the governing systems, the kings, the whoever is capable of, like the sages and
It's such an interesting point that you raised, Dinesh, about how you're enslaved in a system in which you go on preaching exactly what you've learned years back, and that continues to be a stronghold. And you know, when we live in big cities, we kind of don't even realize how the division plays such a huge part in the lives of common people, you know, unless you go into the tier two towns or even into the mofussil places of cities where there are, smaller villages. Like when you travel into West Bengal, you'll realize I have traveled in extensively in the interior parts and how a Brahmin has a special place,
yeah.
and
That is very
so-
important. If you don't have a special place, you won't do this.
yes, and so you're being paid in kind.
So how do you keep that as a special place? Is the caste system, the beginning of the caste system. Right? Your food has to come for free. Your provision, like although you're about to maybe live simply, but the point is that the whole system has to provide for the special place for the knowledge holders. Then comes another way of doing it. It could be palm leaf writing, the written text, right? And then there is this huge aha moment when the printing press is invented. Oh, we don't need to handwrite, like, we just print 100 copies and distribute. That's democratization of knowledge, right? We can break away from this thing. We can break away from this oral tradition, break away from this large institutions and systems, right? And then what happens? It's a democratization of knowledge only if you can read what is distributed. So you need school systems, right? So again, this is another new enslavement which replaces the old enslavement. So if you go to school, if you're doing this, then you get a degree. What do you do with the degree? Is another enslavement. Let's not go there. But the point is the system not having a tool or a mechanism to redistribute a word, share a word in time and space. These were invented. Now we are in a new phase. You record and you distribute, like exactly what you're doing. And anybody can do this. All the smartphones, something else, the community. This is like unexperienced, here to unexperienced moment in the human evolution. Anybody can technically hold their knowledge for their progeny for 3 generations later, and they will hear their grandparents or somebody else in the community in their own voice and see them even, right? It's not like the matter of kings or the money holders or like, even when the printing press, like books came out and all that, what would Krishnadeva Raya do as a king? He would write about himself, emperor of Vijayanagara. And then they will
But
commission
they say that about most history books, that it's a very biased account.
right. I mean, and that's what the state wants. How the greatness. What would you do when you write about yourself? How great you are, right?
Absolutely.
And
yeah,
how
very few of
what would the
us can
state
write about our flaws.
want from its history? How great he was. This win-win, right? So this is how it's been going on. So it's been easy to ignore, easy to not see what else is there. But hopefully now we want it to change, and its change is inevitable.
But this must be making you so you are walking alone in a space where there won't be too many people who'll really be a brave heart like you, Dinesh. How difficult does that get at
No,
times?
no, I'm just said it's inevitable. It's a matter of time. I mean, I and you might be working on like bringing this new, opening this space for you know women and their significance, and like it's been said and done, but now it's just, again it's a new space. Like you want to see what is this world today, a mix of technology, internet, social networking, and all can help influence and bring back this thing, right? Because if you look back like 800 years ago, the caste system was addressed and dissolved, so to say, in Karnataka, right? There was this Lingayat movement, there was this Bashavana, this Akama. You should, I don't know if you have, but you should read like amazing people, and it's all over India, right? It's the same time Mirabai was there. It's that moment where same time the Sufi,
The Renaissance.
yeah, this 12th century something happened.
Mhm.
But 800 years ago, have we changed, right? So it's like we all keep on like chaving something to see like if we can see a better world in the way we envision, right?
How did you come across Jondu now? Tell me.
Ah. Until now, we talked about like information and how significant it is and how it's been removed from the local communities thanks to school systems, syllabus, whatever, right? There's no, the whole idea of like communities telling stories to each other, talking to each other has been removed. So all you have to do is go to school and then you become completely like
It's like rote learning.
rote learning, but you're also disabled in your own community. What do you do with the learning? What do you do with the school degree? Can you climb a tree? This is a classical thing, right? Can you, do your agriculture? Can you do your craft? Can you do your, all this will be a negative grade. So if you are busy with any of this, you won't pass your 10th grade or 12th grade or something, and therefore you invalidate yourself. The system would invalidate you as somebody who's failed, and this is very very natural for women, young girls, right? Either they get them married, and the first thing that would come in the way of anybody's learning is your parents don't understand what you're learning. You go home and can you tell them like what happened in school? There's so many systemic issues in this.
There's such a failure.
Yeah, in and then why they whether it's a patriarchal or whether it's gender oppressive thing continues, right? In the meantime, what the system has done, this expression development apart, is by the same mechanism removed all the handmaking skills. Like nobody needs to make anything. If you want a knife, you order it or you get it from the nearest town. It's cheaper than anything that you can imagine on spending time on making. So that's like the new industrialized onslaught of materials coming into the spaces. But if you look at the long term trajectory of any of these spaces, so learning expression is gone, and making like the skills at all is gone. So when you work with these levels, you realize, right, what might be the most interesting thing is to bring these two worlds together, which is the most advanced technologies being available for the rural hand makers. So the youth who have learned something in their colleges or who want to dabble with technology or around, when the women are sitting and making that thing, and it could be communications, it could be designing something with Mohua remotely, and she's ordering something, but how does the translation happen?
That's where also the gap has been, about designers. There's so much of talk about how designers do not give the due to the artisans because the artisans, of course, do not have access to the kind of pricing that is being sold.
Right.
And when I've traveled internationally, it's amazing when you go and see, very big fashion houses like Gucci and so many other big brands. They use so much of the Indian embroidery and, the Indian motifs and all of that. And, the artist who's actually given that doesn't even get the due. And today everybody's talking about sustainability. I mean, of course, you started it years back and everybody's talking about giving back. To me, I'm always I have hope, but I also feel dejected, because I just feel that it's also like a clarion call that everybody is just talking about. I don't know how much of it'll really get followed through, because, like you said, we are driven with success. That is a certain notion that we have in our head of money, of a corporate job, of a car, and success may not be about having a good crop or having a great farm. And I don't know. I mean, it seems. So far, and I've seen some of the products that I have a bag from your from Iruve,
Thanks. Yeah.
yes, and it's beautiful.
Mm.
But I would really I don't know how long it'll take, Dinesh, for designers to come there and make it available for an international market and in India and fetch it at a price.
Yeah.
How do you see that you will bridge that gap? Do you see that happening soon?
No, I mean, there are lots of efforts towards this, right?
Okay.
Like, for example, what Atul is doing is completely different approach to our approach is to see a long-term convergence where a certain kind of locally initiated capacity for doing enabling this happens, and I shouldn't be part of that. It's like the generative in software, we call it generative software. Like, so it serves many people, kind of thing. So this kind of a regenerative ecosystems are essential, and we are trying to see how something can come about, what might be called as maker spaces in Bangalore, if they are available in rural areas, how the people can trigger themselves in playfully making something, which is you're using advanced technology but making human scale small things. This is also very important. Only when they do that, they can become their own, like, creative and entrepreneuring subsystems, right? Otherwise, you're always being employed by somebody. The only thing that people talk about is, oh, he didn't get a job, she didn't get a job, or they'll talk about always, like, did she get married, you know? So, to break away from this, we need to kind of find a cohesive environment. And one of the things we are looking at is something called backward linkages. To keep asking Mohua, Asif, like, what were your hopes when you were growing up? What did you expect would happen when you got your first degree? Were your parents part of this world? Were your village part of this world? Some of them will say, no, all I wanted to get was enough money to get 2 bangles for my grandmother. But many of them would have other worlds, especially when they're growing. And right now it might be different, rethinking, right? But when you're in that phase, growing and becoming, like, re-energize that backward linkages. Why you are doing what you're doing might be connected to rethinking of what it might become for your community on the long run. So with that thought, you might be able to, like, even if you're Bangalore, you're connecting to the village, and then you will become the design bridge, or you would find how to kind of give an input. But what we are doing at the Craft Center is to say that for this kind of activity, you have to kind of do unique USPs. If you look at all the material, natural material that's available in a locality, every locality, if you look at like 10 different things, some banana, areca leaf, coconut, sheep, wool, skin, whatever it might be, right? Any region will have a distinctive representation of that region. If you can use that as a value add, right, you are actually a creative genius, right? In the sense that you're able to sell the uniqueness of your region, and then you're able to work with your neighborhood to make something unique. But in that process, you're using communication technologies, you're using maker skills, you're using the outside world also necessary as needed for this work to move forward, right? That's the hope in this what we call as craft clusters or crafter space. And it's not easy. One of the main things we are struggling today is why various communities don't want to get into what they call as bag making or basket weaving. They don't see it as a high value product. Maybe bringing a high value, like what you're saying, might be the initial thing. But their caste says, no, we shouldn't be doing baskets.
Why?
Because one is either you have always been doing baskets and you need to get out of it.
Okay.
The second one is you are considered as a landowner and agricultural person,
Okay.
and you don't want to do baskets. This is like imprinted in our minds and what is a progressive being. And this shift is very hard to communicate. So many different things come in the way, but this is our learning experience, right? And then we have to kind of come up with game playing, team building, understanding what your neighbor might be. There's so many models. I mean, every day we look at like, oh, let's try this, let's try that, to break and to bring some homogeneity in thought so that we can kind of reconstruct their world or our worlds for them. So that's
Tell me about your home, Dinesh. How come this is like an open space and any and everybody can come
home.
and stay? And how has it been for you? I mean, you're so different.
Again, home is like a representative of who's been there over time. So every person who's lived in that space has influenced some kind of a flattening of the hierarchies, if you want to say.
Okay.
Or opening the space in their own way. I guess they were at least influential enough to be able to make me just an observer rather than...
But how did you open your doors to any and everybody?
Our door is never shut.
Yes, how?
It's
Is my
not
question.
only open, like it's like in time also, 24 hours it's open. Our dogs are our security guards. So nobody comes in and steals anything. And the dog numbers are growing. Because nobody else wants puppies. So we end up, every batch, we end up like keeping one or two. So that there are 4 generations right now.
How did that happen, Dinesh? I mean, I know the listeners would like to know because, in a city like Bangalore, you have a home where any and everybody can just go in and stay with you. If I mean,
no, I think
this requires.
It's not as simple as that, right? Many of my family are not willing to come stay with me because it's not a house like this. It's like going and sleeping on the streets. Why would you want to do that, right? But it opens up the space for the people that we have been following, whether it's a shepherd or a potter or a transgender person or, So this is a big trade-off. And I keep telling myself, I don't have a problem. You don't have to come to my house. If I want to, I visit you, I'll come. Mahua, can I come stay with you? I'm not there. I'm not like throwing away our company of being together.
Didn't you ever feel insecure about the fact that your door is never locked and just any and everybody is there? Because I think most normal with the inverted comma, people would really worry about their own safety if they were to keep an open house like that. I mean, it sounds absolutely amazing for me because as a writer, I think I would love to be in a space like that because you get stories all the time when you talk to people, right? So like you said, it's a trade-off. But how did that this being of you happen? I need to know that.
I don't know what you mean. But it's,
you know what I mean.
It's over.
Change. I mean,
it's not like an overnight, right?
Yes.
Every day is
have you ever had any incidents where you felt
no, I mean, we certainly had incidences where suddenly the camera is missing because it's open, right? And then we had like meetings and conferences of the people, and we get to know very likely who's done it, and then we don't know what to do about it.
So what do you do about it?
I mean, it's a long-term thing, like whether we want to throw away a group of kids who are coming from a street rat picking scene.
They come over to your house. How? Is it because they get to know from people that they have a place to stay?
No, it depends. Each entity that's partaking has its own history. One is this group called Agni. About 17 years ago, they were part of another group, and they were all working together nearby. They were thrown out of their space because the building wants to be renovated or something. They were homeless, and after a year or so, they met me and can we, I knew them and they're all artists. So they started using the place and it's 17 years, right? So, and there's everything from body language to who they are and who they bring along, and every day the back part of my house is like a open space, right? So I don't even know what happens over there. If I walk in, they'll all be inviting and talking and all that. But so the dogs and the one group of people know the back part of my house.
What about the love of your life, Dinesh? I mean,
everything, yeah.
Tell me a little about that, Dinesh. I mean, you're so fascinating. I'm sure people are drawn to you. So tell me a little secret about yourself. The listeners would love to know that.
I mean, yeah, I have to say they are the most influencing people in my life. and everything that I am is because of
The relationships.
relationships. Yeah, you will start knowing this soon. So, yeah, world is amazing, and if you're open to it, and you only feel nice things come to you because
What about the matted lock?
it happens. If you don't comb your hair, it happens.
Why would you not comb your hair?
Why would you? Don't you have better things to do? Why would you comb your hair? I don't understand.
Yes.
And untangle it and yeah.
So tell me, when you say about relationships, so you're saying that you're a monogamous person, you're a polygamous person, or you have one relationship at a time?
All of it or some of it sometime in my life.
Yeah, but yes, the yin and the yang, right?
Yeah.
And the entire energy and the exchange between two people is amazing. Absolutely, it is.
Yeah.
It is fascinating. I want to have you again and talk to you once again. And thank you so much for taking out the time and making our listeners know about how the world is mixed with so many beautiful people. And Dinesh, I've always been in awe of you. I admire you. And you make me want to leave things and pursue things that I feel passionately about, and which is giving back, to society. And I hope I can follow your footsteps, and I look forward to coming to the open house and meeting everybody there. Thank you.
Nonsense. Oh, thank you. Yeah. You, if you didn't say all this, I wouldn't know who I am. Okay. All
Thanks.
right. Thank you.